Okay, welcome everyone to yet another Meet the Gurus. As we all know, I'm not the guru, but Tim Chase is, and we're happy to have him. He has been in the field quite a long time. He'll tell you about himself in a few minutes, and I think all you know, we're involved in education, and education is communicating knowledge. So our goal here is to simply put out some very good information about, in this case, DevSecOps from someone who's been in the field a long time, Tim, as I mentioned. And with that, I think what I'd like to do, Tim, is just let's get into what you do and how you got there, and basically, what excited you about getting into the security field overall.
Sure, absolutely. I started out in the software testing field probably close to 20 years ago now. And so back when I started, application security testing wasn't a huge thing. A lot of people did functional testing and performance testing, but doing actual security testing of applications was still one of those burgeoning fields. And so I had an interest pretty early on in doing that. And so I took that interest and it just kind of followed me throughout my career. And when I eventually went over to work for Nielsen, I started their application security practice there, pretty much from the ground up. And so, got the testing tools in place, got the team in place, the people in place. And I've really enjoyed it because the field has always been changing. It's never static. It's never the same. There's always a new security threat. And so it's always interesting to see how the industry changes and how us as practitioners change along with it. And I'll say probably one of the things that I noticed that got me to where we're at today with DevSecOps and kind of the conversation that we're talking about is one of the things that I noticed was, application security was easy in a waterfall method in the sense that, it was kind of a checkpoint. There was a gate. If you don't pass this certain gate, you don't go to production, right? But that was when releases were taking, weeks or months to get out. You may do 4 major releases a year and a few minor, right? But what happens as you start to move to an agile mindset? What happens when you start to incorporate DevOps into your organization? One of the things that I found at Nielsen as we were starting to do that was that security was kind of becoming the lagging part of a testing process, right? The long pole in the tent where they wanted to put out a product every 2 weeks, and security was taking a week to do the testing, right? It just wasn't working. And so that's where I really started to get more interested in DevSecOps and what's the processes around how we can incorporate security into a DevOps process and an agile process. And how does security fit in so that it works with the development team and not, kind of doesn't take up all of the time. And so that's kind of been one of my passions for the last, I don't know, maybe 7 years or so, and has led me to do some courses and just speak at different places like this talking about it.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because the kind of explosive nature of the internet combined with the holes in various applications and websites has put it on the front burner, which, it's kind of funny. We all know things are problems until we have we think that there's not going to be a problem until we have a problem, or just someone else in our industry has a problem, and then we realize, there's a problem. And what I understand, again, not even a fraction of what your knowledge is, but what I understand is often people have built applications and then said, by the way, I think we should make it secure, kind of halfway through, or maybe they never went back and said, before we build this, what are the security issues around it? So where do you see, with the clients you've had and the work you've done in the consulting business, where do you, not only in people like Nielsen, where do you see the fundamental flaws? Where is it? Is it in management not realizing the importance? Is it in people wanting to build agile fast and and get things out the door? Where is the first mistake, if you will?
I think there's a couple. I think you hit on it at first, right? One was I think the explosive nature of the cloud really took a lot of people by surprise. So as clients are undergoing digital transformation and as we're moving to the cloud, they're wanting to do things faster, right? So one of the primary motivating factors of going to the cloud is speed. It used to be cost. Everybody used to say, oh, it's going to be a lot cheaper to put things in the cloud. But I think there's probably a lot of room for debate on that, whether it's actually cheaper or not. But one of the things that it does do is speed up how quickly you can move an application to production, right? There's no servers to get set up, right? So I could, in the course of this conversation so far, we've been talking for 5 minutes, and I could have probably spun up 2 different servers, right? And started the deployment of my application, right? So from a security perspective and an application security perspective, that has ramifications. And so I think that took people by surprise a little bit. And so in the speed of doing it, they left application security behind, right? They just said, let's move this application to the cloud and let's be done. And so they left us behind. The other thing that I think is that in general, security was getting left behind because we were taking too long. So, there was kind of an animus between a development team and a security team for a couple of reasons. One is because we were telling them that their baby was bad. That's what they wanted to look at it as, right? You're finding defects in their product, and they don't like that. And so that's one thing that we've had to overcome, and I think a lot of places have done that. And I think the second thing is when you're taking too long and you're stopping them from achieving their goal, they're just going to go around you. Right, and they'll be like, test it when you can. We've got to go to production. We've got this date that we have to meet for our clients. Sorry about it. Right, just come and test and let us know when you see it. So I think those are a couple of different areas that I've really seen of why security had kind of gotten left behind sometimes.
That's a fascinating insight. I hadn't really thought of it that way. Is that you've got people who are kind of thinking of you as the millstone. That boy, if these guys could only get out of our way. We have to get this out the door. And then, of course, then when something explodes and the entire system comes down and someone's got a, ransom with bitcoins on your site, every one of those guys have been fired and you're still trying to fix the problem. So it's interesting how, if you look at it as, and that, I guess part of that also is this alignment of Agile. Now, in a DevSecOps environment, is the security person people, are they part of the stand-ups? Are they part of the regular stand-ups? Or are they sort of, and how does that work in your mind? Let's say in an ideal world, what role are they playing in those stand-ups or in that whole Agile process?
There's a couple of different ways to do it, and I think that they're both equally valid depending on how you're set up. One of the things that I preach when I do DevSecOps consulting and teaching is that find the solution that's right for you. Ultimately you have goals that you're trying to achieve. You're trying to make it fast, accurate, and things like that. And so how you achieve those really is up to you. But there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. So one is you can have a security person embedded on the actual team, right? So they can be part of your stand-ups. They can be part of your DevOps team. I mean, if you really look at what a DevOps team looks like, a lot of times it can comprise your development team. It can comprise somebody with an infrastructure background, maybe a tester. That can be kind of all part of your DevOps team. So you could certainly put a security person in there. A challenge that you have with doing that is how do you scale that? So you could scale it if you're a bank that may have a lot of resources, that might not be a problem. And then you have 100 Scrum teams, you can afford 100 different security folks. You can divide that and say one security tester is a part of 5 different Scrum teams, right? You could in essence do that. But one of the other ways that you can go about it, which I found pretty successful, is with security champions. So that's kind of a term that's becoming more popular in the industry. But in essence, what a security champion is somebody that is trained by the security team to represent security in a stand-up. So that can be a developer, it can be a product manager, it can be somebody who ultimately has the mindset and the goals of a security person on their mind when they're at the stand-up. So you have somebody there that is making sure that the security items make it off the backlog into the product. You have somebody who's fighting for security defects to make it into the release, right? You have somebody there that's a voice for security, and we typically refer to them as a security champion. And so I've started many a security champion program at different places that I've worked and consulted. And so that's one of the best ways that I have found to be successful, finding those people. There's always somebody who has an interest in security on the teams, right? Because they think security is cool. They want to be a part of making security better. There's always people that have that interest in addition to what they're doing. And so I find the security champion program to be a pretty good way of getting representation.
Very interesting. I hadn't even thought about that in terms of what level of expertise does someone need in the cybersecurity world to become that security champion? If you were to sort of design the curriculum, if you were to learn to those skills, what buckets of skills would they be? If that's such a thing of describing it that way.
It is. I think the most important thing to me is that they have some technical background. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't necessarily look for somebody who's got a security certification or anything like that, but I think it's helpful if they can recognize the importance of a security backlog item. So if there's a backlog item, to go back through and validate the all of the input, and so that there's no SQL injection or cross-site scripting in an application. Well, somebody who's non-technical may look at that and not be able to fight for that to understand why it's important, right? But somebody who's a developer or a tester or somebody who has the technical knowledge can look at that and understand it and fight for it. So I think that to be honest, that's one of the things that I think is most helpful, is just finding somebody that's technical. And then it's up to me, when I design a security champion program, what I tend to do is I've got some training, and I put them through training, and I say, all right, here's what you need to know about security. It's a security primer, right? So here's what the CIA triad is. Here's what the different security certifications are and what they mean. Here are some generic, the OWASP top 10, right? So here's the OWASP top 10. Let's talk through each one of these and what they are and why they're important. And I just kind of give them training, and it typically, I'd say it's about 2 hours worth of training. I do it in 2 sit downs, and then you just make sure that they have that training maybe annually as needed. And the other thing that I typically will do is have monthly meetings with the security champions, so that you kind of have that. You have that ability of all of you to get together, talk about what you're seeing at your organization from a security perspective, talk about what they're seeing, kind of being the boots on the ground, what kind of feedback and criticism or pluses that they're seeing where they're at, and then just talk about it from the industry as well. I've in my monthly security champion meetings that I do now, I actually have invited different people from the security team to come on there. So I've invited our director of product security to come on and talk to the security champions, and let's talk product security. Let's talk product security in general. Let's talk about our product security, right? Mm-hmm. And then just making sure that you don't maybe have an ongoing method of communication. So I actually have a Slack channel that's open, that whenever you have an industry breach or something happens in the news, like, you can just post it, right, to keep them current on topics and keep them thinking about security. So that's kind of a high level what I do when I start a security champion program.
I was before our discussion, I was combing kind of the internet and figuring out how much of these DevSecOps guys make it. I was kind of, to say I was blown away is a minor, is a mild way of putting it. Based on a study of 352 salaries, the median is $145,000 a year, or $74 an hour, $75 an hour, and the entry-level positions are at $97,750 in the U.S., of course. And then there's the most experienced making $205,000. This is not an also-ran career. This is not the kind of career that says, you might be able to scrape by if you were in the DevSecOps arena. In fact, this is an area that probably is significantly undersung, right? And it seems like, and I think that what's interesting about it is, everyone talks about the field of Agile, but when you start specializing in an area, and as you've described it, you don't need to start with, we have, as people with extensive security credentials. You don't need to start there. That's not, and that you need to get some fundamental technical knowledge, be aware of the things that you described in basic terms, and then build from there. So, and then demonstrate, one of the things I think this, we're starting these challenges. There'll be cybersecurity challenges that we're putting out there. Demonstrating your expertise to an employer is better than demonstrating that you've got a certificate, right?
Agreed.
Who would you rather hire? Someone with a certificate or someone who has demonstrated they built some projects that can prove they've got cybersecurity knowledge and agile knowledge?
Agreed, and that's one of the things that's interesting about this particular field is I don't think that anybody can say one day I'm going to go into DevSecOps, right, and be successful. I think that one of the things that makes DevSecOps hard to find people, and why the salary is where it's at, is because you kind of have to have that multidisciplinary experience, right? So, just looking at myself, I've had infrastructure experience, cloud experience, application security experience. I've started GRC programs, ran security groups, as a CISO. So, having that experience allows you to really be successful in this field, because DevSecOps, while a lot of people like to say it's an application only, an application security or a product security only field, in reality, it's expanded to cloud security, right? So DevSecOps is going to be, how can you secure your cloud when you're constantly doing cloud deployments? How can you make sure that when your application's in the cloud, you're still doing testing and validating that your application is running securely? And we cover a little bit of that in the course that we've got on Starweaver, where we kind of talk about it. It's something that happens all the way through the process, which is why I think that it can be hard to find the DevSecOps people, and the ones that are good and that are out there have kind of that multidisciplinary experience.
And I think one of the things interesting, we have various content partnerships with companies where, obviously this cross-server, cross-product, cross-platform authorization is pretty critical. And, someone said to us recently, well, how can we be certain that that there's not going to be any holes? Well, to which, one of the guys on our cybersecurity team said, you can never be certain. Certainty is something that you're not going to have. Monitoring and I guess that's part of the kind of evolutionary part of the whole field, right? Is that there's no endpoint. It's a continuing series of journeys, if you will.
It's both. It's a couple of things. One is it's a series of journeys, right? Like, that's one of the things that I like about security is, I'm never satisfied, right? I'm always questioning, have we done enough security? Well, where are we at here? So we've got the servers locked down. That's great, but what about when it's actually running? Like, you're always looking for that next thing. Mm-hmm. And also, you should never. One of the big things about being in the security field is you should never. You should trust no one. I hate to say that, but we should have our stuff in line from a security perspective. But the people who are getting information from other people, like, you should have your security in line as well to make sure that you've got several different stops that have been set up. Like, if you look at the SolarWinds stuff that recently happened. I would question, and I would love to look at in depth. How many people had appropriate second layer of security, right? Security in depth is like chapter 1 of what they teach you when you get your security certification and you do your security training, right?
Right. No, it is fascinating, and I think that part of this I guess the series of fields is that cross training. I've always said this before. A lot of people, I think, historically have been felt that the tech field had to be someone who had the pocket protector and had this totally narrow engineered view of the world. But in fact, it's kind of the people who have, lateral thinking, the ability to think, well, I've said this before, we used to have a guy work for us, and it was years ago, and I say this metaphorically, he used to scratch his ear this way. So he would always do something in a way that's like, but why are you scratching your ear this way? But, it's kind of funny when you do things. It's like when you figure out something, look at it this way, and you turn upside down, you realize there's a problem. So the ability to not just follow the herd, but look at problems in different ways, and having these multifaceted and different types of skills is, one of the, I guess, the great benefits of the security professional, not being that linear. I got to do it this way. Well, I got to do it this way because the customer is not going to do it the way you say, and the hacker is not going to do it the way you say, right?
It's a feedback loop. That's what I teach, right? It's and I think that's part of DevOps in general. Is it's a feedback loop, finding out what works, what doesn't work, and then going back again, and it just kind of continues to do that. And that's what I teach whenever. That's usually the last chapter of a DevSecOps presentation for me. Is try it. If it doesn't work, try something else, right? And keep on questioning.
Right, and then all environments are not the same. All environments will be almost by definition different. So the challenge, particularly I imagine as a consultant and people who are jumping into other companies' environments, is you bring a lot of experience, but you're going to find out that presumably it's very differently done there.
I agree, and so when I go in and I design a DevSecOps system inside of an organization, and I talk more about it, or I do training, one of the things that I always say is look at the way that you do things, and there's no prescriptive way to do DevSecOps, right? If I tell you to use tool A, I said tool A is what you need to go in there, and it will really help you from a DevSecOps perspective. Well, what if tool A doesn't support the languages that you do development in, right? Or what if you do development in 10 languages and tool A supports 5 of them? That's not going to help you, right? And so one of the first things that I think you need to do is you need to go in there and you have to do an analysis of your plan and how you what is your current process, right? Before you start talking about DevSecOps and dividing that process, let's look at your existing DevOps process, your development process, and let's design something that meets you. And going back to our earlier conversation when I mentioned that developers and security haven't always gotten along, one of the things that I have found that's really helped us get along is working with them. And so when you say, look, we need to do application security testing, what tools do you work in? Because I want to make sure that the tools that we use integrate with your tools, right? So you flip the script a little bit, and instead of making the developer work with your tool and the developer do things your way, you're saying, I want to do things your way. I want to make your life easier. Tell me what you use. And so, if they use IntelliJ, well, all right, then that's one of my requirements, is that my security tool that I choose to do security testing has to integrate in some way with IntelliJ. Done. You're a Java developer? Okay, so I need to make sure that my security tool works with Java. Like no stops, full stop, that's it, right? So and so that's one of the things that I think is important to understand is don't go in with a solution that worked at your previous company and expect it to work at your next company. I worked for one company and we had a certain tool set that worked there. When I went into the next company to define kind of their application security process and their DevSecOps process, I started from scratch and I said, let's put together a matrix of what we need. I didn't go in automatically with the tools that I had and this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to succeed, right? So the process needs to be looked at fresh every time and always reevaluate that, right? One year you may be doing Java, the next year you may switch to Angular, right? And you'd be like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's see what we need to do to make that switch.
What do you think in terms of, if you were to, sort of just spitball, what do you think that the average, let's break it down, enterprise, mid-sized, and small companies, where do you think they are in their, call it the life cycle of a let's call it an acceptable, not perfect, but an acceptable DevSecOps program? Meaning, who has, in those, if you could break it down, maybe you'd say it's all one group. If you were to break it down and say the big companies, the middle-sized companies, the small companies, where are they in a program? And let's throw out a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 was, well, oh my God, this is the most perfect program I've ever seen. Did big companies have and maybe I shouldn't be even saying it that way, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's just teams within those big companies, right? Because big companies are broken into smaller units. Where are companies these days? I mean, from your experience.
I think companies are still, to put a broad stroke on it, I think companies are still lagging. I think that, and it's for a couple of reasons, but I think companies are still lagging and they're still doing things the old way. And I think if you look at it from an industry perspective, SaaS companies, like new SaaS companies, are going to be a little bit further ahead because those companies tend to be cloud native. They utilize a lot of the Workday and those type of tools that are native to the cloud. So by default, they're going to be a little bit more on the cutting edge and a little bit further ahead. But if you look at some of the standard industries that have been around for a while, like the banks or the entertainment industries and things like that, I found them to be moving that direction, but still struggling a little bit. Especially banks, like I feel like they historically just kind of lag. They've got their processes and procedures, and adjusting to those just take a little bit of time. But I do still find that in the DevSecOps journey, there's a lot of talk about it. But I haven't found a lot of people that are still doing it right. And I can name some companies right now. I won't, but that I know that are doing it right. And there's some pretty large companies, but by and large, we're still kind of stuck in the static field and providing reports and things like that. I mean, just the other day, one of my buddies I live in Nashville, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to sign a check today for a static analysis tool, and I'm going to choose one of these two. Do you have any thoughts?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why are you choosing either of those? Like, those are from 10 years ago. Like, let's have a conversation, right?" And so part of that is, one, these tools have been around the industry for a long time, so the names are just familiar to everybody in the security industry. So when you go, okay, we're gonna improve our application security program, you default hit one of these vendors. But the second thing is, I found in application security in particular, I have found that there's an industry shortage of talent. I have found that there are just people that have kind of wandered into the application security field from another branch of security, and they really haven't figured out how to do it quickly, and they haven't figured out application security. So you were talking about the kind of the salary figure around the DevSecOps earlier, and that's one of the reasons to me, there's a big shortage of people who actually have experience doing modern application security testing in DevSecOps. So
it's a great time to get into the field. Get in early.
It's a great time to get in the field. If you're a developer and you're forward thinking, and you can articulate these concepts, like, you've got a chance at the job. Like don't just go, "Oh, it's an application security architect. I could never do that." They want to do DevSecOps. I could never do that. Like, if you can, speaking as a hiring manager, if you can get on people who come to me with experience of, they may not have a DevSecOps experience or have been a application security person, but if they've been a developer and they've been doing it a long time and they can articulate to me how they should be doing security testing, I'd hire them and just bring them over, and I can 80% of it. Let me teach you the other 20. Right? That's my advice there.
Yeah, one of the things that Kevin Cardwell, one of our board members, who's also in the security area, said, he's got various initiatives as you do, and you just can't find people. And so we're going to be running programs that essentially are kind of the farm league, and ultimately the big league, where people can pick out the best and the brightest for consultants like yourself who have engagements all the time. They need talent, they need quality, and it's just something that can be learned, but people are just not spending the time in learning it. And obviously the numbers involved are very lucrative. So
yeah. Absolutely. It's a great field to get into, and it's a good time to get into it, for sure.
Well, Tim, I really appreciate it. It's been, once again, great speaking with you, and we'll do this again. And anyone who's watching this, we're going to post some of the links to Tim's courses and some of the things he does, so that definitely link into him as well. We'll put his LinkedIn profile so we all get to know each other. Thanks again, Tim.